backfield. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Italy 42. Taking a look at some running backs here for FanDuel during week one. You talk cash games and GPPs, and certainly some value backs that you need to be aware of. Pretty hard to argue, against kind of the top option here. You talk a little bit about Todd Gurley.
Yeah, Todd Gurley, obviously against a 49ers team that we know is definitely not the 49ers team of old. This is a team that politically and on the field and every way is in just such a mess. And it's not a good defense last year. It was 23rd according to Football Outsiders. It's not going to be any better this year. They didn't make any significant upgrades. Todd Gurley's just got about as good of a floor as you could possibly get. So really the only times we saw him not get a full workload, as I mentioned in the article there, 9 versus Cincinnati, 9 versus Arizona, and 12 against Chicago. They lost by exactly 24 points in all those games. So obviously 2 of those 3 teams were good last year. The other one, no excuse losing to Chicago like that. But, you figure in this game it's a close spread. They're going to be pounding the rock. And obviously with, not a good quarterback under center, whatever you want to call him, they're going to be relying on Gurley a lot. And I don't think the Niners have much of a chance to stop him here.
No, I definitely agree. He's a guy you can pay up for, and especially with all the value that seems to be kind of coming up on the slate. 8,900, sure, it's pricey, but yeah, it's hard to really knock him. Next guy here, you talk about Ezekiel Elliott's obviously the rookie out of Ohio State. You obviously know this guy well, being an Ohio State fan, so you probably are jumping all over this.
Yeah, and I don't like the Cowboys, which is unfortunate because I wish I did, because I love Zeke Elliott. And, just seeing him I think it was twice that he knocked over Cam Chancellor and just bowled him over. Everyone says it was just the one time, but he dominated right there. He looked good. He was, his cuts were precise. He was making good decisions. He got quick to the outside. I know obviously that was one time, one game in a preseason game, but that was a good defense, one of the best in the league, as usual. And now, of course, with Tony Romo out, Dak Prescott, who also looks pretty damn good, going to be under center, and I just find it really hard to believe that, especially behind that offensive line, they're not going to rely on Zeke Elliott a lot. And, 7,900 is not a price I really would ever want to pay for a rookie, but I think this is an exception to that, and I don't think I'm the only one on him. I wish I was, but the Giants, they were not a good defense against the run last year, over 121 yards a game allowed. I think he's going to see 20 touches, somewhere in that range. I don't know how much he'll be involved in the passing game, probably not a ton, but I don't think he'll need to. I think he's got a nice high floor, and you expect that the Cowboys will still be able to put up some points here.
Yeah, you definitely look at that total. Vegas is still expecting them to put up a ton of production, which obviously when you have 2 rookies in skill position, spots, it's kind of odd. But, against this Giants defense at home, I'm definitely in agreement. Going into the GPPs here, you look at David Johnson. Obviously, he was a very high ceiling back last year. Another expensive guy, but I think this one, really intriguing game here because you got the Patriots going on the road here against, the Cardinals defense that is quite good. This really could set up to be a David Johnson game because you kind of expect them to be ahead for most of it.
Yeah, and like you said, the Patriots, I feel like that name in itself kind of scares people away sometimes, even though they aren't a particularly great defense. They're middle of the pack in most categories. And David Johnson, it's just so hard to peg all the rest of the production in that offense because we know Fitz had a huge year last year, but I don't really expect him to produce like he did then. Obviously, you got Michael Floyd and John Brown. Both the guys are solid, but, am I really going to pay up? You don't have to pay up for John Brown, I suppose. But, David Johnson, just the fact that he has the ability to take it to the house at any time. He obviously won't be involved in the kicking game this year, unfortunately. But, short screen passes, he's got that Le'Veon Bell type of open field vision where, he can turn nothing into a huge gain. And I just think, even on a half PPR site like FanDuel, I think that's a really good spot for him because I think that a lot of people will be paying up for, Julio Jones and Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham and all these wide receivers. And I just think that, I don't know that he'll be low owned, but I think he'll be lower owned than he should be considering, the lack of really good running backs in good spots.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially just being $100 cheaper than Gurley. I mean, that's kind of a nice swerve right away if you're paying up that route. So I'm definitely in agreement. I mean, Johnson has that upside. Your next guy here, Lamar Miller, I'm a big fan of. I mean, obviously he's out of Miami. He was a great, efficient back, but never quite got that volume. We could possibly see that here in Houston, which I think we're expecting. I like him quite a bit. And I really like that price tag at 7,600.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see Lamar Miller finally in an offense that I mean, it's just so disrespectful the way they treat him. They treated him like the adopted kid. Like you sit at the dinner table, but you just know that the kid over there is like the one they love the least. Like it just felt like, I don't know. He was like you said, he was always good. He was efficient. He put up numbers. It wasn't for lack of production. It was just that wasn't the offense they wanted to run. And Houston, I guess last year being the exception, has one of the highest volume of rushes of any team in the NFL. Obviously, last year with Arian Foster getting hurt and guys like Alfred Blue just being terrible, they obviously didn't run a whole lot. And plus, Brian Hoyer, rest in peace, his career, I guess. But
He's been nothing but good to us.
Yeah, I mean, I made a lot of money off him, and Hopkins, that connection was great. But I guess everyone in Hopkins is a good connection. But I mean, Lamar Miller, I just think it's an exciting spot for him at that cheap price. And the Bears, obviously, their defense won't be as bad as it was last year, but I don't expect it to be any good either.
No, I definitely agree. And yeah, I do expect, I mean, at home there with Houston, kind of another game flow situation where Miller could see an additional touch or two in the backfield. And obviously, given that he's versatile, I mean, it does work well in the receiving game. That should help out Osweiler, who, I mean, we don't know what to really expect from him, but obviously with a quarterback who doesn't have a ton of experience, dumping it off to backs could certainly help that out.
Yeah. And Houston's been known to do that over the years, plenty. So, I mean, I definitely expect that too.
Yeah. In terms of value here, pretty obvious call. I mean, looking at the Chiefs situation, Spencer Ware, 5,400, going to be a pretty chalky back for week one.
Yeah, not much analysis necessary because you can find it anywhere. I'm definitely not surprising anybody with that play. Obviously, Jamal Charles not officially out, at least as of where we're talking right now, but I don't see why they're going to risk it with them. 2 knee surgeries in, 4 or 5 years now. They're going to take it easy there. And Football Outsiders had San Diego 31st against the run last year. Obviously, they've made an effort to try to shore up that defense a little bit. But either way, I mean, just by volume itself, you figure Spencer Ware should be able to pay off that tag. And I mean, he had 5.6 yards a carry. Obviously, he's not going to maintain that because that's a ridiculous number. He only had 72 carries. But I mean, that's to say this isn't one of those, like we mentioned earlier, Alfred Blue. It's not the situation where it's just, well, you're the starter, I'm sure you'll be good. Spencer Ware is an above average running back, I think. So he's a guy that, not just by opportunity, but just, I mean, the fact that it's a good matchup and he's actually a pretty good football player.
Yeah, he definitely just checks off kind of all those boxes that you're looking for. And as you mentioned here, I mean, 6 touchdowns last year. He's a good back inside the red zone as well. It's one the benefits of why, the Chiefs have leaned on him over West. So next one here, another kind of fill-in for the first few weeks, DeAngelo Williams. I mean, we knew DeAngelo Williams from last year. I mean, he was a cash game options a lot of times with Bell being injured. And then here we are, 7,100. We're in that same situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to me how I haven't read a ton of what everyone else is saying in podcasts and things like that. And so I'm not assuming that nobody's talking about him, but I haven't really heard a lot about DeAngelo Williams and the things that I have seen. And it's not to say that I think I just made the greatest call of all time, because it's obviously not that. But like we were talking about volume, I mentioned here the games that Le'Veon Bell missed last year. Williams had, and this is total touches, of course, not even including targets. It's just his total number of touches with catches and rushes, 22, 26, 29, 18, 15, 31, 25, 19, 23, and then 7, but ankle injury in that game. So you kind of, leave that one out. So this is a team, the Redskins, that 4.8 yards a carry allowed last year was the second worst. Once again, it's another one of those teams you expect to improve on that end. But either way, I mean, DeAngelo Williams, the guy who we thought his career was dead a couple years ago, all of a sudden, it just looks like being a back in that Steelers backfield is just a gold mine. I mean, you don't even have to be particularly good. I mean, as long as you're not Fitzgerald Toussaint, who was terrible in that spot. But DeAngelo Williams, I think he's just a really safe option. And, I mean, he had upside in a couple games last year too.
Yeah, he definitely did, and you kind of go into a little bit here about a division rival with Baltimore, and obviously Forsett, re-signed. Talks about Terrence West, if I can get that out. The whole backfield, I mean, just a complete mess. And we were joking a little bit before we hopped on, and it was like whoever either nails that Baltimore Ravens running situation is going to win all the money, or they pivot off of him to someone else or whatever. It's a situation that's pretty gross.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that I've tried to decipher. Obviously, they don't even know what they're doing, so there's no way that any of us can figure it out, at least this early in the week. But if we get some sort of clarity, I mean, like you said, Terrence West is 4,700 there. If you really wanted to load up everywhere else, you could go Terrence West, Spencer Ware for just over $10,000. And I mean, you can get anything at any position you want there. Obviously, that's not going to be a unique strategy because plenty of other people do that. But, you differentiate yourself enough and you get a lot of high upside guys in there. But I don't think that's a route I'll be taking in cash games because it's not a situation that I'm going to be messing with more than just in some GPPs.
Yeah, definitely. That was floor. Whoever's in that Baltimore situation, their floor is pretty low. So
yeah.
That's going to wrap it up with the FanDuel backfield. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content.